Hi everyone, I'm Coretta. Welcome back to my channel. So during quarantine, I had a lot of downtime and I decided to spend it productively by watching all 4 Jaws movies. I had seen the first Jaws movie a couple of years ago and I thought it was fine. I mean, I had my issues with it and I didn't really see why it was so timeless and so hyped up, but I guess it was fine for like a typical 70s classic movie. And then I was informed that they made 3 sequels to it. And then I saw this clip from Jaws 3. And I just had to see what I was missing. And boy, was I missing. So after I sat down, watched these movies, and typed out what I wanted to say, I realized this video is best presented in 2 parts. So this is part 1, where I will be talking about Jaws and Jaws 2, and then there is a significant break between Jaws 2 and Jaws 3, both in terms of quality and in worthiness of being made at all. So Jaws 3D and Jaws 4 The Revenge will be talked about in part 2, which will be coming out next week. So make sure you look forward to that. I also want to preface this video by saying that I am not a movie critic. I am just a casual viewer and a marine biologist. So I will be coming at it with my honest opinion and my perspective as a scientist. So without further ado, here is my review of all 4 Jaws movies. Jaws is a 1975 Steven Spielberg movie that has become a beloved classic to many. The film takes place on Amity Island, which is essentially Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. In the film, Police Chief Martin Brody is tasked with dealing with a vicious man-eating shark and sets out with a marine biologist and a random crazy loner shark hunter dude to go hunt it down. Let me start out with the things that I actually did like about this movie. I like how it starts off with this nice shot of some submerged aquatic vegetation, shining a light on a underrepresented marine ecosystem. I also like how it brings a little fame to our small little island here off of the coast of Massachusetts, even though I've never been there, so yeah. I like how there's this little dog that looks like a blonde version of my Jada. And I really, really like the guy who plays the marine biologist, because in my opinion he's just like the perfect representation of a hooey oceanographer back in the 70s. I mean, he literally looks like he could be my ichthyology professor like 40 years ago. So I just that gave me a laugh. I found that to be pretty hilarious. And I'm sure everyone knows the story of how the animatronic shark was basically a hunk of junk and was breaking down all the time and was kind of a mess to work with on the set of Jaws, which is why we don't see it for most of the film. But I actually really like this choice regardless of how intentional it was. It really serves to add suspense. We always have this fear of the unknown. We never know what's lying just beneath the surface. So I think that was a really good choice on their part. In the same vein, in terms of suspense, I was surprised at how the jump scares were actually getting me. And I've seen this movie before. And for me, it's pretty hard to be genuinely scared of older movies like this, but I don't know, something about it was just a good movie, I guess. I also, even though I've seen the movie before, so I don't really know how this slipped my mind, but I had no idea that the line
"You're gonna need a bigger boat"
is from this movie, so I guess it's pretty cool to hear that iconic line and recognize it. But now let's get to the fun part. Here's everything that I think was wrong with the first Jaws movie. So my initial beef with Jaws really comes from the negative cultural backlash that followed the release of the movie. I'm not going to argue that it started a massive widespread fear and hatred of sharks, but it sure as hell perpetuated it and tried to validate it, which really sucks. I mean, the shark PR team is still trying to come back from this 45 years later. In a quote published in the BBC in 2015, Jaws was a turning point for great white sharks, says Oliver Crimmen, who's been the fish curator at the Natural History Museum in London for over 40 years. I actually saw a big change happen in the public and scientific perception of sharks when Peter Benchley's book Jaws was first published and then subsequently made into a film. The key problem Jaws created was to portray sharks as vengeful creatures. The story revolves around one shark that seems to hold a grudge against particular individuals and goes after them with intent to kill. From the same article, they say, a collective testosterone rush certainly swept through the east coast of the US, says George Burgess, director of the Florida Program for Shark Research in Gainesville. Thousands of fishers set out to catch trophy sharks after seeing Jaws, he says. Burgess suggests that the number of large sharks fell by 50% along the eastern seaboard of North America in the years following the release of Jaws. I will admit that I have 45 years of retrospect on my side, so maybe this isn't a totally fair criticism, but I really don't like how the whole purpose of Jaws is to create a massive fear response to sharks. And in my honest opinion, I think it would just be a better movie if it wasn't about sharks. I mean, we could pretty easily determine that sharks don't act like this, both from the little that was known about sharks before this movie came out and the decades of research that happened after this movie came out. So if you think about it, if they just created a creature that could be real, but actually isn't real, you can still use the same fear tactics, you can play with the fear of the unknown, and you can use the same themes, but also not cause massive ecosystem damage in the wake of your creation. I'm not arguing that sharks don't kill people, because they do, but they certainly don't have personal vendettas against people, and they don't come back 4, 5, 6 times to try to kill the same person when it didn't work out the first time. I can see how at the time it played into people's fear of the unknown and hyped up this preconceived notion of sea monsters and how dangerous sharks are. But I think that we can tell from the backlash of this film that creators have a responsibility for the message that they send with their content. And I think Peter Benchley, the author of the novel, really realized this after the release of Jaws, because he devoted pretty much the rest of his career to ocean conservation. He said, "Knowing what I know now, I could never write that book today. Sharks don't target human beings, and they certainly don't hold grudges." This film is also incredibly white and incredibly male. There is one scene in the whole hour-and-a-half movie which you can pause the film and see identifiably black characters within the background. It starts at around 52 minutes and ends at around 56, 57 minutes. So that is 5 minutes within a whole hour-and-a-half movie in which you can maybe pick out a handful of black people who are extras. Not one of them has more than a second of screen time, and if they're on the screen twice, I assume it's just how editing worked itself out. There are very few women with speaking roles, all of them white, and there are no real strong female characters in this movie, really in any sense of the word, but just you wait until Jaws 4, because they really fix this problem, and Ellen Brody becomes the strong, fearless female hero we have all been dying to see. Yeah. So with all that being said, let's move on to Jaws 2. So, how does the Jaws franchise benefit from a sequel? In what ways does Jaws 2 expand upon the universe we already know and explore the same themes in deeper and in new ways? Well, if the themes presented in Jaws are masculinity and what it means to be a man, and man versus nature, and brain versus brawn, Jaws 2 takes all of that and says, let's just do it again, and with older kids and more explosions. This may be an unpopular opinion, but I actually genuinely liked Jaws 2 a bit more than I liked Jaws 1. It is incredibly formulaic and unoriginal, I will admit that, but if you're gonna make the same movie twice, at least make it better the second time around, right? And I think the real shock at the end of Jaws 2 is that it actually came out as good as it did. I think they did a good job replicating the feel and the tone of Jaws, and it really feels like a continuation of the same story, although you can definitely tell it is no Spielberg movie. In general, I just thought it was a much more interesting movie. I really liked the banquet scene at the beginning. I really liked how it ended, and also there's like this pesky power line foreshadowing that makes absolutely no sense when they put it in at the beginning, but then really saves the movie at the end. So I'm clocking that as a positive. I will say though, there are things that read as pure ridiculousness and some really bad acting or directing choices that add a layer of unintended comedy to it, and I'm also gonna put that as a plus because they didn't mean to, but they made a comedy. So we still have Police Chief Brody and his family on the small island town of Amity, and pretty much all of the same major plot points happen again. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, somebody dies at the beginning and you can only assume it's from a shark attack. Police Chief Brody has to convince the mayor that he's not crazy and that there actually is a shark that he has to go kill again. The mayor wants nothing to do with it because it's bad publicity and it affects his tourism dollars. One big difference is that Police Chief Brody actually gets voted out of his position after he openly fires into a crowd of people at a beach thinking that he's firing at a shark. One day, his kids decide to sneak out and go sailing with their friends, and next thing you know, they are stranded, surrounded by a shark with the intent to terrorize, and Brody has to steal the police chief boat to come and find them and put an end to this shark madness once and for all. Well, until Jaws 3, of course. So pretty much all of my criticisms from the first movie still hold up here, but there's a few extra special ones I wanted to throw in just for the second movie. One, just basic shark behavior. Sharks obviously are not going to chase things hanging off of a moving speedboat. There have been plenty of documented occurrences of sharks attacking fishing boats and steel boats, but I have yet to see a shark attack a boat moving at full speed with something hanging off the back of it. It is thought that sharks will come after boats because they can sense the electric currents coming off of the motor, but ultimately it's pretty unknown as to why a shark would attack a sitting boat. Number two, the shark's pure determination to terrorize these kids for a very long time, even after pulling down a helicopter, which is foolproof enough that it could kill and eat every single one of those kids within seconds if it really wanted to, and it just chooses not to, and I really don't know why. Number three, the kids are significantly older now than they were in the first movie, even though there's only 4 years between the events that happened in the movies, so I don't really know. I tried looking up how old the kids were supposed to be in both the first movie and the second movie, and it was pretty hard to track. I know the older one is 17 in the second movie, but don't really know how old he was in the first movie, but he definitely did not look 13. Okay, number four, and I'm hoping that someone can answer this in the comments because I genuinely, even after Googling this, did not understand it at all, but Martin Brody putting cyanide poisoning into hollow bullets to kill a shark? I don't know. I'm really having a hard time understanding this one because maybe I don't know enough about guns and bullets and killing sharks, but I feel like the bullet would be enough. Also, we get this shady scene of him in his office at night filling these bullets with cyanide poisoning, and they make this whole point of it where this guy comes in and he's like, oh, what are you doing? And he puts a towel on top of his stuff and walks away, and the guy looks back into the room, and it's very obvious that they're trying to make a point of him sneakily putting the cyanide in these bullets. Next thing you know, he's shooting at a school of fish on the beach, which he thinks is a shark, and then we never see or hear of it again. So I guess that's just it. I guess that's it. I think in general, my main criticism of Jaws as a story really comes through in this movie. In the first one, it was clear that the shark was out to do whatever it took to kill indiscriminately. It bothered me less because it was more just a misrepresentation of shark behavior. But in this movie, the shark waits. It plots. It plays with its food, but there's no real want to the villain character of the shark. He could eat any one of them whenever he wants, but chooses not to. We never get any insight as to why, because it's a shark, But the behavior of this shark is inconsistent with the behavior of the shark in the first movie. And we know that shark died, so it's not like it's the same shark coming back around for part 2 with a new tactic. So now the rules of the Jaws universe have been bent slightly to fit a different storyline, and it doesn't really fit in with the man versus nature theme anymore, and it left me feeling really kind of unsatisfied because after a while we lose that sense of suspense that the kids are going to die. I started to stop wondering if the kids were going to be eaten by the shark because it had the chance time and time again and chose not to. To their credit, we do get that suspense back at the end when Brody shows up again, but there is just a long stretch of this movie of kids just sitting on boats without any real threat of the Brody kids not making it out at the end. The shark destroys everything that might give them a chance of getting out and getting to safety, but never actually just goes and gets what it wants. We don't actually know what the shark wants. The only time I think this is actually somewhat well done in this film is with the jet-propelled shark scene, as silly as it sounds. The shark has this crazy strategy of sneaking up on these two teens in this boat and then knocks one of the kids out the boat, pushes the boat so far away the kid can't swim back to it, swims back around to the kid, jet propels him into the side of the boat in a way that really reads like a cartoon gimmick, but whatever, and then goes in for the kill. And I think if it wasn't also ridiculous with the Coca-Cola product placement and the jet-propelled shark, I really don't know what that was about, it would actually be a really good way of building suspense. And like I said earlier, sharks actually kind of do sort of act like this in real life. So if anything, this is like the most scientifically accurate part of the film, in my opinion. All right, so that is it for my review of Jaws and Jaws 2. So what do you guys think? Have you seen these movies before? Would you see them after watching this video if you haven't watched them before? And can you tell me why cyanide bullets would be beneficial for killing a shark? Because I have yet to figure that one out. If you like this video, make sure to be on the lookout for part 2 coming next week, which will be about Jaws 3D and Jaws for the Revenge. And oh boy, do I have some thoughts on those movies. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!